This is Luke from Emo Electric, and we're back for part 4, the final part in our 3 horsepower electric outboard comparison video, where we're comparing the Torqeedo Travel S, the ePropulsion Spirit, the Remigo One, and the Temo 1000. So in this video, we're going to talk about a bunch of little things that, of course, all add up to an important thing, which is which outboard is best for you. So we'll talk a little bit about warranty, maintenance, support, shaft length, zincs, how you can lock these motors up, and what they're made out of. If you want to see all of this stuff in a chart where you can compare the motors side by side, head over to our website, emoelectric.co, and you can download our PDF guide to everything we've talked about in this video and the other videos in this series. So the first thing we're going to talk about with these motors is what they're made out of and how they're constructed. As a quick aside, all of these propellers are plastic. They're all 2-blade. As far as I'm aware, the only option you have with any of these props is with Torqeedo, who makes a weedless propeller that is supposed to be a little bit higher speed on the top end, but a little bit less efficient and less likely to get seaweed caught on it. But essentially, with all of these motors, we recommend having an extra prop. They're plastic by design, so if you hit a rock, you're breaking a prop. That is not nearly as expensive as the motor itself. But to get started on motor construction, we'll start with Torqeedo. We have a plastic shell for the battery. The tiller is made of plastic, and then up here is metal. We have an aluminum shaft, and then as we drop down lower, we have our motor pod here. The bottom of this pod has a plastic skeg on it. You actually have to install this when you buy the motor, and personally, I'd rather have a metal one, but I believe Torqeedo has done that on purpose so that it's sacrificial, right? So if you do hit something, you snap that off, and you're less likely to damage the tilt trim mechanism, the pod, or some other more expensive part of the motor. The construction of the Spirit is quite similar. Plastic housing for the battery, plastic tiller, and then we have an aluminum shaft, metal tilt trim mechanisms, and then everything down here is all metal, including the skeg. Next up, we have Remigo, who probably has the least plastic in this entire construction. The only plastic on this motor is the prop, this cap here, or part of that cap, these knobs, and then a covering for the end of the tiller. The rest of this motor is metal. They have an aluminum housing for aluminum unibody, as they say, that houses the battery, everything inside of the motor. We like how this charge port is metal, buttons are metal, so really durable looking motor right here. Then finally, we have the Temo, probably a little bit more plastic on it than the Remigo, but less than the Spirit or the Travel. We've got an aluminum tiller here with a little plastic cover on the end. The motor bracket here is all metal. The main housing is anodized aluminum. And then down below, this skeg is plastic. It does have a little kind of metal casing on the tip where it would hit the ground, so that should do something to protect this. And then I believe the housing of the motor right here is metal. Certainly feels like it. So when you decide to buy one of these motors, you need to make sure that you're getting the appropriate shaft length for your boat, or in the case of the Temo and Remigo, you just want to double check that the shaft will be long or short enough. More than likely is with these guys, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. With the Spirit and the Travel, they come in a few different shaft lengths, and when Torqeedo and ePropulsion measure they're talking about the length of these shafts, they're measuring from right where this bracket sits on, in this case, the motor stand, but generally your outboard bracket or your transom, down to a center line of the middle of the prop. So right there would be our shaft length. All the numbers we're talking about today are that measurement. So you may see slightly different numbers in the literature. When you are measuring for a shaft length for an electric outboard, you want to basically measure the height of your transom. We have other videos on this and other resources on our website. Just to run through it quickly, if you have a dinghy, you want a couple inches. It varies by manufacturer, but somewhere between 2 and 4 inches between the bottom of your boat and the tip of the propeller in a vertical position. So the Torqeedo Travel comes in long or short shaft. The short shaft version is 24.6 inches and the long is 29.5. According to Torqeedo, the short shaft version is ideal for a 15-inch transom and the long is ideal for a 20-inch transom. For the ePropulsion Spirit, you have 2 options for the Spirit Evo and 3 options for the 1.0 Plus. The 1.0 Plus is available in an extra short shaft, which measures 20.7 inches. You want your transom height to be less than about 15 and a half if you're going to go for the extra short shaft. The 1.0 Plus and the Evo come in a short shaft version that's 24.6 inches and a long that's 29.5 inches, which are the same measurements as the Travel. Remigo has an adjustable shaft length, which according to them is between 15 and 23 inches. They are taking into consideration the diameter of the prop, but when we compare that to that same measurement on a Torqeedo or an ePropulsion motor, the maximum shaft length is 29.5 inches. So the Remigo in its longest shaft adjustment is the same length as a long shaft Travel or Spirit. And then you can go pretty much as short as you want with the Remigo. They say the least is 15 inches, but as far as we can tell, you could go even shorter than that if you wanted or needed to. And then finally, the Temo, similar to the Remigo, except it's not quite as long on its longest setting. On its longest setting, it is 24.5 inches, and then you can really make it as short as you'd like. So with the Spirit or the Travel, you have to buy the right shaft length before you purchase the motor, whereas with the Remigo and the Temo, you can adjust the shaft length after you purchase it. It's relatively easy to do that on both of these motors. On the Remigo, you can see there's 3 nuts and bolts here. So you just need a wrench to go over that nut and then an Allen key for the other side. You take this off the stand. You want 2 people. One person holds the motor, the other loosens this up, and then you can slide this down or up. You do need to leave about 15 centimeters or about 6 inches between right here and the highest point you can bring up that tiller bracket to. So just keep that in mind if you need to go really long. With the Temo 1000, you just have to loosen 2 Allen head machine screws. There's one right where my finger is and then one below. It might be tough to see it there, but you just loosen those up. Then you'd take out this track here. That track, if you're gonna shorten your shaft length, you can cut it and reinsert it, or you can leave it out. It makes it slightly more efficient hydrodynamically, but mostly it's just for aesthetic purposes. So very easy to adjust the shaft length on either of these motors. And it's a big advantage they have because if you're using one of these electric outboards across more than one boat, this might be a great choice if you need a different shaft length, or if you sell your dinghy and you buy a different one that has a different transom height, you don't necessarily have to sell your motor. If you're considering buying one of these electric outboards, which we all know they're not cheap, you're probably wondering how you can secure it to your boat to prevent someone from stealing it. Each one of these electric outboards has a way to lock it up. Some are better than others. We'll jump right in. So with the Torqeedo and all of these, you can turn these transom bolts centered and put a lock right through there. On the Travel and the Spirit, these are pins that are not easy to remove. On the Remigo and the Temo, you can remove those with an Allen key. So it's not a perfect solution, but it might deter someone who's looking for an easy steal. The other thing you can do with the Torqeedo is run a cable lock through the handle on the battery. And then you can also run that cable lock through one of these holes here. They're designed for the remote kit, but if you're using the tiller version, you just pop this black cap out and you can run a small cable lock through there. The other way is if you remove your battery, right, take it home or put it inside your boat, there's a nice metal handle here that you can also run a cable lock through. So a few different ways to lock up the Travel. When it comes to the Spirit, you can do something similar where you run a cable lock through the handle. You can also run a cable lock through here because there's this bar, or you can lock these up with a regular padlock. On the Evo, there's no way to lock the tiller to the motor. On the 1.0 Plus, the tiller is non-removable. I don't think it's particularly likely someone's just going to steal the tiller. Probably don't even know how to remove it, but someone did ask about that recently. To the best of our knowledge, there's no great way to lock that up. The other thing you could do for a Spirit is buy one of these lock sets. These are kind of cool. They're made by an ePropulsion customer in Europe who wanted a better way to lock up his motor. We've got one for the battery and then one for the motor. So the battery one just fits in that blue handle. We lock it up, and now you can't lift this blue handle up and thus cannot remove the battery from the motor. And then on the motor side, you can always do that padlock, but with this lock, you can see one handle is going to slip in there, the other goes there. So open that up, push that in there, fold that in, and then that snaps back. And then we're going to lock it by turning that tab down, and then you see you can't pull that off. These are plastic, they're 3D printed. You could smash it off if you wanted to. This one would probably be a little harder to break off, but it's not a perfect solution, but it's great because you can still use your motor while it's all locked up. You don't have to take that cable lock on and off every time. Next up, we have the Remigo for the transom bracket. Again, you can put a lock through there, but these are Allen head machine screws. But you can put a regular padlock through there to lock the bracket to the boat. And then the only way that we're aware of locking this up to the transom bracket is by replacing this pin with a thin rod that has a lock on the end that prevents this from coming up. To the best of our knowledge, Remigo does not sell anything like that. You'd have to find something third party. And then finally, with the Temo 1000, they do sell a security kit. We'll overlay that on the screen here. We don't have one with us today, unfortunately, but there's a small metal bar that goes through here, I believe, that prevents the battery from being lifted out of the motor. And then there's a padlock that would go through these two transom bolts. And then I believe there's another lock that prevents the motor from coming off of the bracket here. I would imagine it's a metal version of this pin with a lock on the end. So there is a way to lock all of these motors up, but what's great about them is they're so portable. So if you have your motor somewhere that you're concerned about, you can always take it off and put it, back in your bigger boat or somewhere else where it's not as easy to steal, opposed to a gas outboard that's so much heavier and so much more of a pain to lift on and off your transom or your boat. So just like gas outboards, most electric outboards have a sacrificial anode. That anode is designed to corrode before any metal on the motor corrodes itself. If you're using one of these motors in salt water, you want a zinc anode. If you're using it in fresh water, typically you want an aluminum anode, or in the case of the Remigo, a magnesium anode. So starting off with the Travel, one thing to keep in mind is this ships stock with an aluminum anode for the shaft. So that's right down here on the back of the shaft, right behind the prop. You get an aluminum one when you buy the motor, but if you're using this motor in salt water, you have to buy a zinc anode instead. There's also some anodes that are within the transom bracket. So if we lift this up and then we come around the back here, you'll see that I believe there's 3 anodes kind of throughout the transom bracket, one on each side here, and then one up above there. Those, unlikely you would need to replace them very often, but they are there to help protect the transom bracket from corrosion. We also have a bunch of different anodes on the Spirit. We've got one on the back of the shaft, just like the Travel. We have one underneath the pod in front there. And then we have a couple more that are on the transom bracket. There's one that's, the transom bracket ones are in there, and then there's one just under here. The ePropulsion Spirit ships stock with zinc anodes. On the Remigo, we have similar setup. We've got a zinc anode on the back of the shaft, and this does ship stock with zinc anodes. Zinc anode on the back of the shaft, and I believe there's one just in front of the propeller there. And then there's also one up on, or kind of within the transom bracket here. Come around to this side, should be able to see there's one somewhere in there. A little trouble finding it, but the best of my knowledge there is one in there. The Temo, on the other hand, does not have any anodes. We actually just called our rep to learn a little bit more about it. What he said is that, since the majority of this motor is plastic and the main part of the shaft is anodized aluminum, and the motor is not designed to live in the water, it does not have any zincs. And that makes sense in that, you shouldn't be leaving this motor down unless you're using it. Typically, people aren't using these motors for very long, so it doesn't have that much time to corrode. With that in mind, if you do have a Temo 1000, definitely don't leave it sitting in the water. We don't recommend that for any of these motors, by the way. Don't leave it down unless you're using it. Lift it up and out of the water. So we'll see over time if the Temo 1000 has any corrosion issues. Personally, I'd feel a little bit better if it did have a zinc, but it is what it is. Might be totally fine. With maintenance, the most important thing you can do for an electric outboard is rinsing it with fresh water after use in salt water and making sure that the electrical contacts stay clean. So with the Travel, you want to rinse it all off, and then you also want to spray a little bit of water down the shaft. The shaft is hollow, so it doesn't float. And you can see right there, if you come around here, there's a little hole, and you should want to spray a little fresh water down there. You'll see it drains out the shaft right at the bottom there. And then the electrical contacts don't have cables. They come with a little bit of dielectric grease pre-installed at the factory. So recommend keeping up with that. Occasionally some contact cleaner is what Torqeedo recommends. And just keeping those electrical connections free of corrosion and putting that cap on when you're not using your motor. Very similar with the Spirit. You want to spray a little bit of water down the shaft by turning it to the side. And you want to keep, these are the holes there, and you want to make sure you're keeping all of these electrical contacts clean. This does not come with any dielectric grease from the factory, so we recommend getting like a toothbrush, putting a little bit on here. You really don't need much, and then monitoring these for corrosion and cleaning carefully as needed. If you do need to clean them, just be really careful not to break those pins. You want to try and clean it gently with a toothbrush, a little bit of contact cleaner. The Remigo, there really isn't much to it. Spray it off with fresh water and monitor the charge port for any signs of corrosion. But it's so simple, there's really not too much to maintain and too much to go wrong. Finally, the Temo 1000, just like those other motors, the shaft does fill with water so that it does not float. So what we recommend is when you're done using it, pull your battery out, spray off the bottom of your battery, spray a little water down the inside of the shaft there, and spray off the outside of the shaft, and make sure you're keeping the electrical contacts here and on the motor side clean and free of corrosion. A little bit of dielectric grease certainly goes a long way with that. And one other point from before when we were talking about housing, one of the nice things with the Temo battery is it is aluminum housing. It only has plastic on the top, and then this button here is what tells you your state of charge rounded to the nearest 25%. So nice and durable battery there from Temo. So now we'll do a little overview on warranty, service, and maintenance. So the warranty period on the Travel and the Remigo One is 2 years no matter what, whereas with the Spirit and the Temo 1000, you get 2 years out of the gate, and then if you register the product with the manufacturer, you get an extra year of warranty coverage. I know with ePropulsion that has to be done within 30 days of your initial purchase date. We highly recommend doing that. Not sure what it is for duration off the top of my head with Temo, but certainly worth it. Once you know you're keeping your motor, definitely register it. You get an extra year of warranty coverage. In terms of service, there's very little in the way of regular recommended service on each of these motors. We'll do a quick overview on kind of maintenance here, but compared to a gas outboard, no winterization and virtually no maintenance. But if you do have a problem with one of these motors, you can bring it to a dealer or directly to the company to get it serviced. With Torqeedo, not every dealer is also a service center. They service these motors at Torqeedo USA in Illinois, and then there are Torqeedo service located around the country. With ePropulsion, every ePropulsion dealer, at least at this time and to the best of my knowledge, also needs to service these motors. So we service ePropulsion motors here, and most other dealers either do or should. With Remigo and Temo, not quite as clear on where these motors are serviced. Obviously, if you buy one of these from us and you have an issue, feel free to come to us. I'm sure the manufacturers themselves service them directly. Since they're newer and smaller companies, we just aren't sure exactly how that works yet, but presumably their dealer network will also service these motors. And if you're curious to know the answer to that, give us a shout and we'll get back to you. So that just about does it for our last video comparing the 3 horsepower electric outboards that we sell. If you haven't watched the first 3 parts of this, definitely take a look. There's a lot of good info there on the batteries, range, runtime, all the other features and options for all of these motors. If you want to compare all the data that we've talked about here, head over to emoelectric.co, download our free PDF comparison guide. And if you still have questions, leave them in the comments below, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and if you do want a motor, we're happy to get one for you.